What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Hope everybody's having a wonderful night. I know I am, but I can't say the same for 49ers general manager John Lynch. There's a photo going around where he just looks incredibly upset, visibly frustrated, and I can't say that I blame him. With the way this season has gone for the 49ers, you take another loss falling 40-34 to the Lions. You now are 6-10 on the year. And I don't know what moment during this game got John Lynch to this breaking point. Maybe it was after that second missed field goal by Jake Moody or that second interception in the fourth quarter by Brock Purdy that pretty much put this game on ice. But how John Lynch looks in this photo perfectly encapsulates the mood that millions of 49ers faithful have worldwide about how disappointing of a season this has been for a team that came very close to hoisting the Lombardi trophy nearly a year ago. And Brock Purdy has the 49ers in a situation where they got to put their foot down. Look, I get that the market is the market, but gas prices are high everywhere. That doesn't stop you from trying to find the gas prices that are the most affordable. So when it comes to the quarterback market, just because guys like Tua, Trevor Lawrence, and Jordan Love are getting massively overpaid, they're scamming their franchises, doesn't mean that the 49ers have to fall in line and get scammed as well by a quarterback that's asking for way more than what he's actually worth. Look, I love Brock Purdy. I believe that if he wants to get paid $30 million to $40 million a year max, the 49ers should go ahead and bring him back. But if he's asking for $50 million or more, he wants to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, you got to put your foot down. My mama used to always tell me, JT, be a leader, not a follower. And the 49ers, if they follow in the footsteps of the other teams that have massively overpaid at the quarterback position, they might not ever go back to another Super Bowl for at least another decade or two. Because overpaying for Brock Purdy is going to make the current situation that you're in linger into next season, because then you're not going to have enough money to improve the offensive line in free agency. You're not going to have enough money to extend any of the other high-level players that you have on that roster. There's no use paying a guy in Brock Purdy that obviously has limitations. And one of those is that if you don't have a great team around him, he becomes an average quarterback. But if you give him great pieces around him, he looks like a high-end quarterback, which is why it doesn't make a lot of sense to invest so much money into a guy that's only as good as the pieces around him. Look at the situation that Dak Prescott has put the Dallas Cowboys in. He's been scamming them for years. And look at some of the good players they've had to let walk. Their defense has taken a step back this year because they lost a lot of depth that followed Dan Quinn to Washington because they couldn't afford to keep them. If you want to field a Super Bowl contender for the foreseeable future, you got to be willing to put your foot down with Brock Purdy and say, nah, bro, like, we're willing to give you $40 million a year, and that's where the negotiations end. Because if you're asking for anything more, then we're just going to tell you, seek a trade and find a team that's willing to give you that kind of money, because we're not folding to you. You're not worth this. Brock Purdy is a top 12 quarterback. Quarterbacks that deserve $50 million a year are supposed to be elite quarterbacks. They are supposed to elevate their team like Lamar, Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen. Brock Purdy doesn't do that. He's not a system quarterback per se, but he is a quarterback that is benefiting off being coached by one of the greatest offensive minds that we've seen in the past decade, and having guys like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle around. So, of course, that for him to still play at a high level, he needs to have an elite supporting cast, which is why it doesn't make a lot of sense for the 49ers to overinvest in Brock Purdy. You would be better off rolling the dice, drafting either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward in a trade-up. And I know, I get it. You tried that experiment before a few years ago with Trey Lance, and it didn't work out. But both Shedeur and Cam Ward have way more experience than Trey Lance, and they're just better overall quarterbacks than Trey Lance. And if you start over with a rookie quarterback and you don't have to commit so much financially to a guy like Brock Purdy where you're pretty much getting scammed, you have a great shot at getting back to the Super Bowl, because ideally, a lot of teams' Super Bowl windows are before they have to pay that massive contract extension to their franchise quarterback. That's the striking zone for a team like the 49ers. You want to be able to win it all before you have to give a lot of money to Brock Purdy. Rather it be 50, 40, or 30 million a year, you got to be able to maximize this small window that you have with him playing on this relatively cheap contract. But with him seeking a new extension and him only having 1 year left, you got a tough decision to make. And I look at it like this. I'd rather have a quarterback that's younger and more cheaper than overpay for a guy that is asking for top 5 quarterback money where he doesn't play at a top 5 level. That's you getting scammed. And the 49ers cannot afford to get scammed by Brock Purdy like how the Jaguars have been scammed by Trevor Lawrence and like the Dolphins have been scammed by Tua Tagovailoa. Eventually, fire meets ice. And you got to compromise. And that compromise for Kyle Shanahan may be, you know what? You may be a solid quarterback, but we're not about to overspend for you. We are about to go in a different direction that doesn't strap us financially for years to come, because we give you all this money, but yet you're not able to play up to the level of expectations that comes with getting this kind of high-end money. And that's the thing that these general managers always confuse me with. Tua's not worth the money that he's getting paid, and you know that you have obvious issues on the offensive line. So why would you give him that much money when he's not good enough to overcome limitations up front? You feel me? You know that Brock Purdy is only as good as the team that you can put around him. So therefore, why are you going to give him all the money that you could be using to better improve your team if you were to go in a different direction and bring in a younger option at quarterback? If you bring in a Shedeur Sanders or a Cam Ward, you trade up, you save yourself so much money where you could just go on a spending spree in free agency. You probably could trade for a couple of guys as well, but it's not worth it giving up so much money to the point where you're like the Cleveland Browns. You're just so financially strapped for cash that it's hard for you to improve at any other position other than the draft. You cannot get scammed by Brock Purdy. The 49ers have to be firm. They got to stand on all 10, and they got to say, look, brother, we're not like these other teams that are getting scammed by their quarterbacks. We have a price. You have a price. Either you meet our price or you can get the F out of our face. And that's how I would tell Brock Purdy. I'll tell him that straight like it is. You feel me? You're a good quarterback. You've led us to a Super Bowl. You've won a lot of games. You played at a pretty high level. But at the same time, let's not act like you're as good as Lamar Jackson. You know what I would do? I would show Brock Purdy highlights of Lamar, Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow, and I would ask him, hey, can you do this? Can you play like this? Have you played like this? And be honest. And if he says no, I'll say that's exactly why you don't deserve to get paid $50 million a year. Well, what about Jordan Love? What about Trevor Lawrence? Who cares about those guys? They're scammers. We're not about to let you scam us. You can go scam another team. If another team wants to give you $50 million a year, tell us the team that you want to go to that's willing to give you that kind of money. We'll make it happen. We'll get some draft compensation for it. But it's like, it makes no sense. Look, I'm one of those people that if I see something that's expensive, but I can get it for less, I'm going to whoever can give me this item for less. I'm not about to overspend for something that I can get at a budget price. You're about to pay $50 million a year to a top 12 quarterback at best? Come on now. And I love Brock Purdy. I don't want nobody to come on here saying, oh, you a Brock Purdy hater. I'm not a Brock Purdy hater. I am a fan of paying players what they are worth. We all have a worth. We all have an amount that we feel we are entitled to based off our services, our talents, or whatever we provide, we feel like we have a price for it. But there are times when we can be a little bit greedy. We know that our services are not worth enough to be asking for the money that we want, which is why we have negotiations. You feel me? And that's why you have to find the middle ground. And the middle ground with Brock Purdy would be 30 to 40 million a year. Baker Mayfield is better than Brock Purdy, in my opinion, based off how he has played this season, and he's not getting 50 million a year. So if Baker Mayfield is getting under 50 million, why would we give Brock Purdy more than that? You feel me? It's about, thinking smart, not putting yourselves in situations for you to end up asked out like the Cleveland Browns are, or like the Jags are, or like the Miami Dolphins are. Smart franchises don't overpay for players that are asking for more than what they are actually worth. And Brock Purdy getting paid $50 million a year is a no way Jose for me. The 49ers cannot allow themselves to get scammed by this guy. I'm a huge fan of Brock Purdy. I don't want this to come off like I'm hating on the brother. But what I do hate are teams that overspend for a quarterback that's not worth the doggone money that they're asking for, and they cave to their demands out of desperation, out of fear that we could end up doing a lot worse at quarterback. I'd rather roll the dice and try to find a serviceable quarterback for less than $50 million a year before I cave and get on my knees and suck up the Brock Purdy and drop a $50 million bag on him, because he's not worth the doggone money. You're not going to get the results or the return on investment that you pay for if you give Brock Purdy that kind of money. I appreciate you guys for tuning into this episode. Like, comment, subscribe. Remember, we are not just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Links are down in the description down below. If you're listening on all podcasting platforms, make sure that you go ahead, give us a 5-star review, share this episode in the pod with your friends, family members, and acquaintances. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys shortly with another episode.